Right, I've taken the back off of this. These little spaces that I've made here enable the 8-inch body to slide in nice and tight. These are 6mm holes and stainless steel bolts. I think they're 6s, they could be 5s. Right, anyway, then where I've drilled these reasonably low near the bottom, I've put some aluminium there and a couple of screws, and then where I've drilled a hole in there, I've tapped a thread in there so they thread in there and hold it tight. Inside the body, where I've screwed the neck on, I've put 3 stainless screws into the neck each side to hold it stable, and then so that none of this can move, I've put this stay bar in there which is aluminium to keep it perfectly so it can't move that way. And how I've fixed this into the neck is I've got one of an 8mm fitting that's got a thread on part of it, and then it's got a wood screw end on the other one. You can get these from hardware shops. So you pilot drill that. Also, because it's awkward to get a drill in there, what I've done is I've drilled the hole in here, and then I've got a long thin drill, so that I've pilot holed this with a 6mm drill, which has enabled me to thread that in there and then be able to slide it all in to make it work. After I've drilled the hole, I've drilled this out to 8mm, because this is an 8mm bolt, which is fair enough. But these are quite loud anyway, without even putting the back on, especially if you hold it away from your body a bit, you get quite a good sound and loud out of that. Right. Now, because this is a slightly smaller saucepan than this one, then you can see. So obviously, I've done different holes in this one. You're not limited to what size of these you do, but if you've put the 10, where's my piece of wood on? Where I've marked this with 10 different lines, which are the 10 little bolts that hold that on, then obviously I've drilled these holes in between on this, as you can see. So you're not limited, as I say, to any size. I've drilled them in between there, so there should be 20 of them if there's 10 of that. And on here, this one, I've used a smaller tank cutter than that, because it's a smaller saucepan. It depends what saucepan you get. Obviously, if I was using one of those, this would be the tank cutting size. And this one, what's this say on here? 25mm, that one. Right, okay, so that's basically that. Now, you can buy necks to do these with. By the way, these machine heads are about £6 for 4, only about £1.50 each. And this here, there's a firm called David Dyke, a luthier, who sells this imitation bone in quite a decent sized block. It was about a £5, but I'm going back a few years. But also, you can cut pieces like this out of it that will fit in if you want to do any kind of patterns with it. Very useful piece once you've got a block of it. And because I've used 0 frets, then all these are doing is sliding in there. And that is your actual end. I found it's much better than all this messing around trying to do that. These fingerboards are slightly wider than some ukuleles that I've seen, because I've got biggish fingers, and it does enable you to get your fingers on the fretboard without being cramped up, a bit like when you're playing the fiddle. Okay, so as you can see, the joins where I've joined these pieces of wood that I've glued in round here to strengthen it inside. You can see the seam there's on the back, different layers. You can see that on the last video. And on here you can see this is not one piece of wood, this is two pieces of wood. Now, going to the angle, it's entirely up to you what you do. Now, a lot of luthiers are making the neck lean downwards, going up so you get a high bridge there. But there are alternatives to this. You've got the choice, because if you're playing George Formby type stuff, you need a bit of space here so that your fingers are not crashing on it all the time to get that kind of you need a little bit of room to do that kind of stuff. So what I've done on this one, I've let the fingerboard protrude a bit above the skin to give the space there, and use the bridge that way. If you can see that, if I'm holding that in the right way, that's that. Right, to make a fingerboard, I've bought this ebony in, and I've fretted it myself using one of these type microsaws. You can buy a fret ruler, which you can use. I've got one upstairs, but on these I found a good ukulele. Then I got a piece of soft, very softish wood, and just gently clamped it on there. You could use a bit of polystyrene, anything, to get the imprint of all them, so you get them all exact. Yeah, and then once you know what you're doing with that, these are two bits of a bit of Victorian bed iron. Okay, I've cut off. What I've done is, before I've put that in, I've clamped these two together, and then I've sawn the frets on them where the slots have got to be, and then I've made sure they're dead in line and put this in between. So if you're going to make a fingerboard up, say this is just an example. If you're going to make a fingerboard up, you can get a piece of, make a bit of room here. Right. You can get a piece of ebony. This is not the same fretting as this fingerboard, but it doesn't matter. This is just to show you. If you get your ebony about the right size there, then, and you can, if you've got excess, a little bit of excess, you can G-clamp it there so it can't move when you cut your slots. If you happen to cut the depth a bit too deep on your slots, and slight little bits too deep, what you can do is you can sandpaper some ebony dust, mix it with a little bit of araldite, that 5-minute stuff from Poundland or wherever, and then you can just fill them little ends, because this has not been filed or sanded to be finished yet. Another point about buying ebony on fingerboards as well, where people tell you, oh yeah, this is seasoned for this, that and the other, some of the instruments I made, the ebony's not been as seasoned as long as they're trying to tell you, because if you make an instrument like this, right, if you make it smooth like this one, after a couple of years, that will still be the same. But if the wood's still moving, you'll find you've got sharp edges where it's not so seasoned as they've told you it is, yeah? It's just a tip, you know. Not everyone tells the truth, you know that. Right, these little mother of pearl dots now, to put them in there, you can use a proper, with a spike in, little wood drills, and you can just drill them and just push them in with a bit of PVA. The glue I'm using, most luthiers are using Tight Bond, but I found I've been using Evo Stick waterproof PVA glue, which is the one in the blue. You can get the green and the blue but I'm using the blue because I've found I've mended loads of guitars and they've not broken. Some of them have been, well, mission impossible nearly, but I've fixed them and I've had no one come back to me over them. Right, going back to making a neck, this is just an example of a block of wood that's been laying around for years, okay? What I've done, I've sanded that, and I don't know whether I'm holding this right, I've sanded that, it's been cut in half, then it's been turned round so the grain is matching, like that. So it's by using 2 bits of wood, if they try to walk one of them, the other one's got to move, so they're fighting against each other. So the chances of you getting anything moving is not going to happen. Right, to get this really flat, you can get some of the red oxide sandpaper, put it on a really flat area, piece of, well, whatever you can use, MDF or plywood or any metal flat surface, clamp it or whatever you do, and then if you slide it up and down, you'll get a real flat surface, right? And then it'll glue on good. A quick tip, because I had this happen to me on one of my mandolins that really wound me up. Where this glue is so good and you clamp it on there, you need to put some kind of a thing on there, so when you go to glue that and clamp it, it can't drift. Because I made a mandolin and it was so annoying, the one that I've got called Teardrop, as I clamped it on, it drifted a little bit, and after even about 6 minutes, I couldn't get it off with all my strength, whatever I was doing, and I weren't into doing any damage. So it's slightly skew whiff, which is really irritating. So watch out when you're clamping any of this up that it don't drift, because it's so irritating. Right, back to this piece of wood. Now, if I was going to use this, it's much too big. It's just an example to show you. What you do is, what I've done before now, is work out, so you do it on this side. If you work out roughly that your fingerboard's going to go on like this, then you need an angle back this way, right, and you angle it along here, and then you're going along here, say then around for the end. This is too long anyway, yeah, and then by doing that you can cut that and bandsaw that the shape that is, yeah. Now then you'll have something much too wide, so then on the top you're talking about cutting that shape, yeah. Hope you can see all this, because I'm not much of a film producer. So then you can work out what width you're using here, yeah, and you can saw it too big, look. If you saw it too big, say the fingerboard, you're going to taper it, so you're going down like that, then you can get a straight edge and go across there to make it right. But that gives you some idea of what you're trying to do. Then you straight edge that across there or whatever. You can allow a bit so you can play around with it afterwards. Then what I've done then to get the curve, to get the nice curve back on there, yeah, lovely and even, is after that's been cut rough, I've clamped this bit, yeah, I've clamped this bit, and don't forget we've got a different shape here. Then I've got some red eye, I've took the rough corners off using a Surform or a rasp or whatever, and then to get it roughly right, and then I've done this with red oxide sandpaper. Perhaps you might use a 60, then go 80, then 120 to get the bit smooth, to get this bit smooth, yeah, and then you can play around with it to sand this like this. I mean, this has been sanded up so smooth, it's beautiful. And some of these as well, because of the varnish, what I've used Ronseal floor varnish, loads of coats of it, and then I've gone down and sanded it till I've, you know, with very fine 400, 800, 1200, and then after that you can just give it a rub over and it's lovely. that's basically that. Right, I'm trying to think, is there anything else to tell you? If you don't want to, I've only gone to the trouble of making one of these jigs because obviously where I've made more than one instrument and I wanted to do it all myself. So that's why I've gone to that trouble. Right, I've got loads of bits from David Dyke. Now this mandolin fret wire usually comes, if you buy it in the post, it usually comes rolled up. You can buy straight sticks, whatever, but it usually comes rolled up, okay? And don't go and do it on this to start with. Just get another bit of wood, yeah, and just do yourself a slot to make sure you've got the right saw. I have this micro saw, and I bought another one, but the handles just fell off. I don't know what kind of, who designed that, which is rubbish. And the handle just slipped out of there, bit of a nightmare. But this is the same kind of thing, and all you've got to do is to make sure, yeah, these saws are designed for the frets to bang in. Then what you do with this then, right, is you can do it with your thumb. You can gently straighten it. By playing around with it like that with your thumb. Yeah, you can see how I'm straightening it. Yep, you don't curl it up the other way. It won't matter if it's a fraction. If it's still a fraction not straight, look. And then what you can do then is to just snip yourself a bit off with the snips, and then you can tap it in and snip the ends off, and then you can sand them off with a flat disc, either clamp something on here so they can't move, file them, whatever you're going to do. So that's basically that. That's really, I can't think of anything else much to tell you. These are the best type. You can buy little round things, but don't go there. These little shoes are the type you want. And as I say, I was paying £2.50 from different suppliers, 25 quid on a mandolin like this, and they're 42p. These were a few years ago from China, free postage. So, you know, it's a drastic difference. This, where I've put on here, Peter Chittenden, June 2013. What this is, some of them have got stainless on, but this is a piece of aluminium off of a bendable bit off of a sheet. And what I've done, if you can see, I've just drilled some holes there and holes there, okay, so that the strings are tied with a knot behind there, so that they slide in and come over. And this then, also like a banjo 5-string tailpiece with a movable bit on, this is holding them down so that, to keep it away from the bridge. This is, I've just shoved this shoelace on here to stop the back ring, so that bit's not making a noise, as well as the front bit you want to make a noise, you know what I mean? But I must say, they all sound lovely, and you wouldn't believe, really, that it was a saucepan. But as I say, if you get a swan brown saucepan, it's pretty good alley. And like, if I cut the bottom off of that pressure cooker that was here on the last video, and then I was to just hang it up and give it a ding, you'll see that different things have got a nice ring to them, because all the aluminium grades you can get about 200, right? And all you do then is you can get one and you think, this sounds duff. I've not gone to the extremes that I could have done with these, where I could have got a stainless ring and then put that on top. Say I was going to do it on the top there. I could have put a kind of a tone ring on the top of there, so that when you go, you know, if this was the top of an instrument, you could go a tone ring on there and still be able to get your 8-inch banjo head over it, and it would be interesting how much more ring and power that would give it. But I'm not playing around with these obviously forever, because when the grandchildren come along, that's when I got into making my little cars. And if you go on the mobility scooter conversions, you'll see all my grandchildren driving around in these lovely little cars I've made of them, and they've really enjoyed them. They've great fun. There are a few things I did forget to mention which are very important. When you put these, if you're putting these little dots, you can buy these easy enough online. These little mother of pearl dots that you buy, there's 4mm, 5mm, 6mm, whatever you want. What I've done to put them in is, when you're making your fingerboard, if you mark exactly where your frets are going, yeah, and then you can drill, before you even put the frets in, you can set a little pillar drill, the right depth, to drill these holes in the right place, and then, before you even fret it, mark obviously where you're going to go, so you know where you are, and then once you've set a pillar drill and you get them slightly below the depth you want, when you fill it up with a bit of PVA glue, when you push them in, if you push them in with something flat like that, and then slide that off, then you'll know damn well you're not going to go in too far, because if you go below the surface with them, it's a nightmare, because there's no really easy way of trying to get it back out. So if you've got to just gently push them in like that, there's no way can you go below the surface. That's one thing. Right. The other thing I didn't mention, this is what they call a Japanese saw rasp. What it is, it's like a load of rough axle blades, if you can see that, and then on the other side it's a load of smooth axle blades. Now these are fantastic for taking wood off. It did have a handle. This was about 26 quid, I think. I've got a handle, but I've took it off. I find it much more easier to get a welding glove and grab hold of it, and you're much more control of it and use it one hand. It's much more powerful to get where you want it rather than fiddling around a handle. That's one thing. Another tool, there's somewhere around here, not far away on a farm, where they reshoe horses. Now what this is a horse hoof file. Now as soon as these got slightly blunt, they used to throw them in the skip, but they're fantastic for taking wood or aluminium off with. Great tool. And they're some of them are slightly different, but they've just come out of the skip for nothing. It must cost a fortune new. That's that. Right. The other important thing I wanted to say is because I like the look of it all being black, and if I hadn't put a thin layer of ebony on there, then you'd get the black and brown together, but I feel it's much better that the back's all brown and the front's all black. Now these are little diamond pieces of mother of pearl, a diamond shapes. Now, obviously, if you put 6 of them together, you get a really nice star. Now, it will be a joke, really, trying to put that in there and scoop that out afterwards. So what I've done is I've got a thin piece of ebony, I've clamped it on a piece of wood, I've marked round where the mother of pearl's going, and then I've cut that out and folded it so they fit in there, so that when I do glue that on, it was easy to just push them in there, rather than I wouldn't have been able to do it the other way. I've not got the tools. Also, another useful kit is needle files. In fact, the other day I had a sharp tooth break off in my mouth. I put masking tape on one side and I filed the sharp edge off of a tooth with one of these because it was giving me a sore tongue where I kept touching it with a tooth that had sheared off. Right, basically I think that's it really. Can't think of any other kind of problems. Obviously you've got, you can, why I started making these little tail pieces aluminium as well is because with these small drill bits, it's a nightmare trying to drill the stainless where it's so hard. And it's not really changing anything at all to do with the sound whatsoever, you know what I mean? It's no different at all. I think that's about it.